Alright, so today we are going to be looking at deepfakes again. And it's kind of a question that I haven't really been thinking about, but however, what if I tell you that I saw this article the other, like today actually, and I said, you know what, this is a question that I kind of had in the back of my mind, but I never really went into it. And my question is that have deepfakes gotten worse? And that sounds a bit weird. Have they gotten worse in the sense that, like, have they gotten worse to like detect, or have they gotten harder to try to break down, digest, and all that stuff? Because, as you know, we literally talked about like what, a few days ago we talked about Google's new AI, like GOVO3, and how that one was genuinely insane for the kind of content it was producing. It had audio and everything compared to, like, stuff from 2 years ago. So my question was that how good have deepfakes gotten now within that same level of evolution, or that same train of thought? So that's what we're going to take a look at today. And so this article I have for here is called "Deepfakes Just Got Even Harder to Detect. Now They Have Heartbeats." So I read that and I said, well, that's kind of a weird one. Like, how does a deepfake have a heartbeat? And so, yeah, it says here, a new leap in AI-generated content means deepfake detectors could be falling dangerously behind. And so, here's what I'm gonna do for you guys. So I'm gonna give you guys a video, okay? And I want you to tell me in the comments, or tell yourself anyway, between the original and the deepfake, what did you notice that was slightly off? So I'm gonna do a video of Bill Gates. So one's gonna be the original on one side, and one's gonna be deepfake on the next side, and it's gonna play one after the other. And so I want you to tell me, what did you notice that was a bit different, and come back to me after you're done.
Can be done in a way that none of those failures of the past would recur, because just the physics of how it's built.
This is deepfake example of what is possible with powerful computer and editing. It took around 72 hours to create this example from scratch using extremely powerful GPU. It could improve with more computing time, but 90% people cannot tell the difference.
Even though I know it's a deepfake, what I was paying attention to was subtleties. So I noticed that the lip syncing was a bit off, even the way that the person was talking was a bit weird, and if you even like pay really closely attention, even though we're going to see in these later models that they've gotten better at this, even the way the skin looks can look a bit off sometimes. Now, you're not going to nail it every time, but that's just something that I noticed personally. And something about deepfakes that you'll also take a note of is that sometimes, especially if you're scrolling really fast, which a lot of you do, me included, say you find a video about somebody, like, I don't know, saying some wild stuff, you won't be sitting looking at it like, I see the reflection isn't working. No, you're going to see the video, you're going to be like, oh, he said that? That's what you're going to get. So yeah, in the age of massive information influx and misinformation, it is quite hard to pay attention to. So, anyways, diving into this article we have here, it says deepfake videos where a person's face or body have been digitally altered to mimic someone else are getting disturbingly good. They now even have heartbeats. This finding, detailed in a new study published in the journal Frontiers in Imaging, could render some of the most advanced deepfake detectors, which rely on analyzing consistent patterns of blood flows across a person's face, essentially useless, making dangerous content even harder to spot. Deepfakes are usually created from driving videos, real footage that artificial intelligence manipulates to alter the features or even the entire identity of a person on film. Not all uses are malicious. Smartphone apps that age your face or turn you into a cartoon cat, for example, use similar underlying techniques for harmless entertainment. At their worst, however, deepfakes can be weaponized to create unsolicited sexual content, spread misinformation, or frame innocent people. And so, yeah, that's kind of what's been going on, actually. I mean, as you're going to see later, deepfakes have been a bit of trouble in the NSFW market. Moving along, in this study, researchers used a cutting-edge deepfake detector built on medical imaging technology. Remote photoplasmography, I cannot say that word, estimates pulse by detecting tiny changes in how light travels through the skin. The same principle behind pulse oximeters used in hospitals. The detectors are usually impressively accurate. When compared against electrocardiogram or ECG recordings, the difference was just 2 or 3 beats per minute. Until now, it was thought that deepfakes couldn't replicate these subtle signals well enough to fool RPPP-based detectors, but that assumption no longer holds. If your driving video is of a real person, this can now be transferred to the deepfake video. Professor Peter Eisert, one of the these co-authors told BBC Science Focus, I guess that's the fate of all deepfake detectors. The deepfakes get better and better until the detector that worked nicely 2 years ago begins to completely fail today. When the team tested their detector against the latest deepfake videos, it freely picked up an extremely realistic heartbeat, even through none had been deliberately added. So that is kind of insane when you think about it, because like I said, like the deepfake I showed you guys was from 2 years ago. So imagine how much it got better now, to the point where it can actually mimic like what your blood vessels like feel like. Because the way that I understand this technology works is that it looks at your face and it detects like, it looks like it'll detect how light interacts with like your blood vessels and stuff, and you can get roughly how many beats per minute that your heart is going at, roughly. But in case you're not really understanding, here's a video for you guys that I found really quickly that kind of shows how this technology kind of works. So anyways, as you can see here in that video, he literally showed like where it was detecting his face, and then it was literally showing how many beats per minute it was going based off of. So it's actually pretty cool technology, actually, when you break it down. So moving along within the article, it says here, so is all hope lost? Are we doomed never to trust an online video again? Not quite yet. iSearch's team believes new detection strategies could help. Instead of measuring a simple global pulse rate, future detectors could track the detailed flow of blood across the face. As your heart beats, blood flows through your vessels and into your face, iSearch said. It's then distributed over the entire facial area, and there's a small time lag in that movement that we can pick up in genuine footage. Ultimately, though, iSearch doubts that deepfake detectors alone will win the race. Instead, he points towards digital footprints, cryptographic proofs that showed footage hasn't been tampered with, as a more sustainable solution. I fear there will be an end to the deepfake race not too far in the future, iSearch said. Personally, I think deepfakes will get so good that they'll be hard to detect unless we focus more technology on that proves something hasn't been altered, rather than detecting if something is fake. So he actually raises a very interesting point that I actually didn't really think about until now. So he's saying instead of focusing on detecting deepfakes, focus on to see if something has been tampered with. Now, the only thing that, from my understanding, is that detecting if something is tampered with is a bit harder to notice, because say for example you make up like original footage and then nobody else has it, and then you deepfake it. How good is it at detecting if it's been altered? Just food for thought. Because naturally speaking, the more crafty of people will definitely do stuff like that. They'll have the original footage for themselves, won't even bother to alter it, and then they'll just leave it as it is. And so that's where it is. But it's kind of funny how like we're always worried about misinformation, because from what I've noticed, especially in the most recent years, that nobody checks anything. Like nobody bothers to check, at least from what I've seen. So it's like, you know, what people have to learn to do, in my opinion, is just that they have to learn to search for themselves and just go verify information. It's really not. It's not easy to do it, but it's better to do that, because one tweet could be all it takes for a lie to be spread across. And with how fast the internet is when it comes to spreading something, it's so quick. Even if you are innocent, it won't be enough. So here it is. So that's that. But I actually wanted to go and take a little bit of a detour. So I was able to look at this article that they mentioned. It's like Frontiers in Imaging, because I took a brief look through it before this video, and there's a few points that I want to highlight for you guys, because it's genuinely fascinating how they actually did this. And from what I read, this was all ethically sourced, so nobody got used, and people were consented to be able to be experimented on. So don't worry about that part. At least that's what they said, unless something comes out later. But for now, I want to take a look at this study, because naturally studies do help further your understanding depending on how good it is. So let's take a look together. Deepfakes have become ubiquitous in our modern society, with both their quantity and quality increasing. The current evolution of image generation techniques make the detection of manipulated content through visual inspection increasingly difficult. This challenge has motivated researchers to analyze heartbeat-related signal to distinguish deepfakes from genuine videos. So the long story short of that this whole study was that they basically took some models or some actors. They put them into they put them into they filmed them basically like to get some footage to film deepfakes off of, and of course naturally then they would swap up the faces around and then they would detect with the heartbeats. That's the gist of what happened here. So like I said earlier in the earlier article where it talked about heart rates and heartbeats and stuff, so you can actually use that to detect if something is fake or not. But naturally, because AI evolves so much and deepfakes evolved very, very quickly, you'll see that, it's a bit harder than we thought. So here we're going to go to this section where it says here the reference and temporal alignment. So it says here that we focus on global RPPG signals over time, specifically the average color changes across various spatial positions on the facial surface. To ensure accurate signal extraction, it is essential to compensate for any movements made by the person in the video. To achieve this, each frame of the input video is aligned with a reference face by detecting facial landmarks using media pipe. These landmarks form the basis of Delaunay triangulation, generating a 2D mesh over the facial region. The reference 2D mesh consists of 918 triangles and serves as a foundation for tracking and stabilizing the facial movements across the video. While this approach is easy to implement, it is not considered motion blur, and the accuracy of the registration is constrained by the facial landmarks. To further enhance this important process, we will extend our method in the future by using the approach proposed by Seibold et al. For removing motion blur and for by pixel-wise registration. So in each input frame, we track the detected facial landmarks and use the 2D mesh to wrap each triangle to its corresponding reference position. This warping process aligns the facial features from the input video to the reference face as illustrated in figure 1. The outcome is a motion compensated image sequence that serves as the foundation for our subsequent analysis, ensuring that the extracted RPPG signals are not affected by facial movements. So if it sounds a bit confusing, essentially, whenever it comes to making the mapping stuff out digitally, they'll use triangles, and triangles are very good for making up faces and models. So that's essentially how it works. So if you're confused about why triangles, why would you use triangles, that's basically what it is. And if you look in the figure right here, that's literally what it's showing you. So every single online asset that you see online, or say you look at a video game, some models are made up of triangles. They're not made up of lines or something. Triangles is what really builds up every single little bit of every part of the model. So just something to note in case you're a bit confused on why it sounds a bit weird, triangles, what? So yeah, they use triangles. And so here, if we keep going, so if we jump to the next section, where it says here encoding of heart rated features, it says here to extract heart rates, we perform a global analysis of the entire video to obtain a single robust reference RPPG signal, which is associated with the subject's pulse signal. For RPPG calculation, we apply the plane to orthogonal skin POS transformation on a 10-second window orange, i.e. including 300 frames. A preliminary analysis about the optimal window length showed a standard deviation of the differences between extracted heart rate and the ground truth for the 10-second window of 1.39 beats per minute. Beats per minute, increasing to 3.38 beats per minute or 3.76 beats per minute and 4.15 for 8 seconds, 6 seconds, and 5 second windows, respectively. The entire video is processed by sliding this window over the video duration with a step size of 1 frame, ensuring continuous analysis and accurate pulse signal extraction. After processing the entire video sequence, the output signal is normalized and filtered with a fit order Butterworth digital band pass filter with a frequency range of 0.7 Hz and 3.0 Hz. Keep going forward. This filtering produces the RPPG signals. For each time step, we then transform RPPG signal from the time domain to the frequency domain using a fast Fourier system, FFT, mapping the signal magnitudes across all time steps for further analysis. This processing is applied for the entire face region to capture physiologically relevant signals, as well as to 2 homogeneous square regions in the background to collect image noise information, see figure 2, and the background regions are averaged during transformation, resulting in a single FFT map for the background. The 2 FFT maps, one from the face and one from the background, are then subtracted based on their intensities to generate a background-free FFT image that focuses on the physiological induced signals. Whew. So looking at this figure right here, you can kind of see what happens, but that was all taken. But essentially, it was just breaking down, like, what they're looking for when they're looking at, heart rates and heart rate features in your face. That's basically that's from my understanding what it was basically breaking down. So a lot to read, a lot to get through, but I wanted to just look into it just because, when you really look into these stuff, you have to understand how the technology works or how they're reworking it. So I don't want to just sit and summarize all of it. I want to actually dive into it a bit more. So that's why we're doing a bit more reading. Just so we have a full understanding of what's going on. And so we're going to just go to these next two relatively quickly because I do want to segue into something else. So we're going to look at the captured data set. And so here, we're just going to dive down all the way down to here where it says here, we used an industry RBG camera to capture the video recordings. The recordings vary in length, ranging from 10 seconds up to several minutes with a frame rate of 25 frames per second and a resolution of 2448 by 2048 pixels. In addition to the RGB video, we measured DECG and PPG of selected subjects. These physiological signals were used to calculate the heart rate as ground truth for analysis. Selected frames from our datasets are shown in figure 3A. So basically, you're showing here, differences between, not differences, but showing that what the data that they recorded. And that's essentially what we have here. So it's pretty straightforward. This section is just telling us how they got to where they got to. Now, if we go to this last part here, we got the signal analysis. It says here, in the initial phase of our analysis, we focused on our own data set when we successfully extracted meaningful heart rate, HR, signals from both genuine and deepfake videos. In all cases, the detected HR corresponded to the face of the subject in the video, regardless of whether the video was real or a deepfake. And just really, really quickly going to this part, we can actually go and deduce that when it comes down to it, you can actually see here the results of analysis on 4 videos, 2 fake and 2 genuine, an exemplary depicted in figure 4. And so essentially, what you can see here is that you have the graphs showing the heart rates, we'll say the heart rates of both the real person and the deepfake. Now, you can obviously tell who's deepfaked and who's not between each of them. But if you actually take a look at the graphs, you can actually see here that it is very, 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 very close. Like, it's insanely close. And you'll be asking yourself, well, how is it really possible for a deepfake to replicate a heart rate? And it's very simple. It's the fact that as I've said so many times in other videos, and many people will tell you, but artificial intelligence or large language learning models, especially now, have so much data to work with, the point where, hell, we're probably all in a database somewhere where it literally is extracting all this information, looking at all these blood vessels, seeing how all of it works, and then it's going to compile that into what we see here. That's literally what's happening. So the fact that it's doing that is not a surprise here. And you can even go further into this, and you could actually say that, looking at these other graphs here, you can see as well, they're all very, 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 very close between each other. Like the real person, the deep fakes and all that, it literally goes to the same amount on average, looking at the the BPM. It's so close. So even though earlier in the video, when I asked you guys, can you detect which one's a deepfake or not, it was probably already hard for you to understand what was the difference already. And now even subtle features that I pointed out earlier are even getting phased out. That is how serious it gets. That's how crazy it is. So just something to take note of. So if you always want to jump straight to the conclusion, first paragraph sums it up pretty well, where it says here, in conclusion, our study demonstrates that high-quality deepfakes exhibit RPPG signals that correspond to the HR of the source driver video. By comparing the different PPG signals and analyzing the FTT maps, as well as the extracted heart rates and its correlations, we confirm that the globally derived RPPG signals originates from the driving videos rather than being artificially generated. This finding challenges previous assumptions that deepfakes inherently lack valid physiological signals, revealing the limitations of using simple heart rate analysis for detecting high-quality deepfakes. So that is how crazy it is. It literally can imitate a person's heartbeat on average. So just something to take note of. Now, to Now, you might be asking yourself, how can we really combat this? And so, naturally, this is something that's like it's an ever evolving battle. But I just want to point out that there are a couple of places, especially like I covered in the previous video, which we linked down below, that South Korea is very, very, very anti-deepfake. So let's do a quick look at it. Not that long ago, in like I believe like 2024-ish, around that area, like fall 24 last year, South Korea actually had like a full-on war, but they went out of their way to criminalize like deepfakes that did specifically, sexually explicit content. And to understand how much of this was a problem, it was literally, I believe around the time that I found out about this, naturally, there was a lot of, there was basically this group chat on Telegram where a lot of weird stuff happens, where essentially, in essence, there's a big group chat that would deepfake a bunch of like women, and they'd also be making fun of these women at the same time in South Korea. Now, if you don't know, South Korea is a bit on the feminist side, so they're very pro women rights and stuff. So naturally, that gets found out, and people weren't too happy about it. And even a more recent example is that of, you remember Johnny Somali? Remember Johnny? Yeah, he also deepfaked somebody as well. And so he deepfaked somebody after Korea decided to criminalize these deepfakes, which is, typical him, but regardless of that. And so, and what he did is actually he took somebody who was a streamer and made him kiss her while she was deepfaked. And he's so dumb to the point where he literally showed himself doing it. So whether people are on the Darwin scale or not doesn't matter, but that's just to point out where we are in terms of that. And actually, not too long ago now, even recently, in the US, there's also something called the Take It Down Act is being implemented. So we're going to take a bit of a segue into that act before we end off. And it just says here that, in general, by resonating subsection I and by inserting subsection blah, intellection disclosure of non-consensual intimate visual depictions definition in the subsection, the term consent means an affirmative, conscious, and voluntary authorization made by an individual free from force, fraud, duress, misrepresentation, or coercion. Digital forgery. The term digital forgery means any intimate visual depiction of an identifiable individual created through the use of software, machine learning, artificial intelligence, or any other computer-generated or technological means, including by adapting, modifying, manipulating, or altering an authentic visual depiction that, when viewed as a whole by a reasonable person, is indistinguishable from an authentic visual depiction of the individual. The term identifiable individual means an individual who appears in whole or in parts in an intimate visual depiction and whose face, likeness, or other distinguishing characteristics, including a unique birthmark or other recognizable feature, is displayed in connection with such intimate visual depiction. Interacting computer service, the term interacting computer service as the meaning given the term in section 230. So that's basically a bit of a breakdown. There's way more to this act, but essentially they're trying to crack down on deepfakes now. So that's probably, one of the good things that's been occurring as of lately. And so in all of this, you may be asking yourself, okay, Ashley, what could we possibly do about deepfakes? Truth is, I don't know. I know, right? I don't know something. But what I do know is that when it comes to like laws and legislations, I find that they're a bit slow on this stuff. However, the problem with certain lawmakers is the fact that they'll put a law into place but not really understand the full ramifications of why the law should be in there in the first place. So while I am in favor of this act entirely, we have to understand like how deepfakes are made and how we get to that point. So that's what I hope happens. And when it comes down to this new technology, I mean, naturally in the arms race, we have to get better at detecting this kind of stuff. So the angle of finding out footage is tampered is a good one, but it's more like we should have multiple ways of detecting a deepfake. One should be, all right, blood vessels are in check, blood prevent in check, ding, that's one. However, look at the history of this video, has it been tampered with? Oh, maybe we shouldn't trust it. That's what I mean. So that's essentially what I believe it should be done. But anyways, it's a bit of a complicated topic, so it's not like one way to go about it, but I think we could all agree that, maybe using people's likeness to, put like deepfake porn is not a good idea. I think we'd agree on that one, right? Which is arguably like the biggest, the biggest issues when it comes to it. Because, whatever deepfakes eventually became more mainstream, like it was kind of like a Pandora's box situation. And every time you introduce something new onto the market, you have to look at it like this. who is like the most malicious person who's going to take advantage of this system? That's how you have to look at it. And so here it's like, yeah, people are making pornos and all this stuff and spreading misinformation already. And with how much people don't check already, you can see where this is going. So yeah, that's essentially my whole 2 cents on it. I thought this technology is pretty interesting to look at, so I want to take a look at it with you guys. But let me know your comments down below, and maybe you have some solutions that I don't have. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and follow my socials down in the description below. But that's it for me today. So ciao.